Hello again, welcome back to the Telltale channel. Today's story is the Disney classic Lady and the Tramp. Be sure to pay close attention to the story and watch it all the way to the end for the quiz and fun facts, and remember to help the channel grow by subscribing for free. One Christmas morning, Jim Deer gave his wife Darling a very special present. It was wrapped in a box and tied with a pink ribbon. When Darling opened it, a tiny Cocker Spaniel puppy peeped out at her. "How sweet," cried Darling. "What a perfectly beautiful little lady," and that was how Lady got her name. Lady loved her new home. She had a big garden to play in and bones to bury. Her best friends Jock and Trusty lived nearby. Jock was a small black Scottish terrier, Trusty was a big brown bloodhound. When Lady was 6 months old, Darling gave her a smart blue collar. The little spaniel rushed off to show Jock and Trusty. "My, you are a full-grown lady now," said Jock. Lady felt that she was the luckiest, happiest dog in the whole world. A few weeks later, Jock and Trusty found Lady lying by her water bowl. She looked very sad. "What's wrong, lassie?" asked Jock. Lady explained that Jim Deer and Darling seemed cross with her, but she didn't know why. "I wouldn't worry," Jock said. "Darling is expecting a wee bairn." Lady looked puzzled. "He means a baby," explained Trusty. "Oh," said Lady, still puzzled, "what's a baby?" "A baby," Jock began, "is a cute little bundle of..." But before he could finish, a voice behind him said, "Trouble." Lady turned round to see who had spoken. Walking towards her was a scruffy but handsome mongrel called Tramp. "Remember, when a baby moves in, the dog moves out," he warned. The baby was born that spring. Jim Deer and Darling were overjoyed, and so was Lady. Sometime later, Jim Deer and Darling went away to visit friends. Aunt Sarah came to look after the baby. She brought her 2 Siamese cats with her. The cats were sly and mischievous. They raced through the house, frightening the canary, ripping the curtains, and upsetting the goldfish bowl. When Aunt Sarah saw the mess, the cats made it look as though it was all Lady's fault. Aunt Sarah was very angry. In fact, she decided to buy a muzzle to restrain the little dog. So she took Lady to a pet shop that very day. As an assistant placed a muzzle over Lady's head, Lady panicked. She managed to wriggle free and leapt off the shop's counter. She ran out of the door into the busy road. Cars and lorries whizzed by. As she dashed across the road, Lady was nearly knocked down by a car. Terrified, she ran into a side street. Suddenly, a pack of stray dogs jumped out and began chasing her. Lady fled down an alley to try and escape, but a huge fence blocked her way. She was trapped. Just as the dogs were about to attack her, Tramp jumped over the fence. He was a very fierce fighter and quickly forced the other dogs back the way they had come. Lady had been saved. Tramp walked back to Lady, who was shaking with fear. "Oh, you poor kid," he said, looking at her muzzle. "Come on, we've got to get that thing off." Tramp led Lady to a nearby zoo where they soon spotted a beaver. He was gnawing through some logs to build a dam. Tramp persuaded the beaver to use his strong, sharp teeth to bite through Lady's muzzle. In a second, the muzzle dropped off and Lady was free again. As the stars began to twinkle in the sky, Tramp said, "Come on, it's supper time." He led Lady to the back door of Tony's Italian restaurant. "Hey Joe, Luca, who's here?" called Tony to his chef. "Bring them the best of spaghetti in the town." While Tony and Joe played soft romantic music, Lady and Tramp shared a delicious meal. "What a wonderful night," thought Lady, beginning to chew a strand of spaghetti. Suddenly, her lips met Tramp's. They were both eating the same strand. Lady blushed and the two dogs gazed dreamily at each other. They were falling in love. After supper, Tramp took Lady for a stroll in a park. As a reminder of the evening, the two dogs put their paw prints side by side in some wet cement. Later that night, they fell asleep together under the stars. The next morning Lady woke with a start. "Oh dear," she said as she suddenly remembered, "I must go home to look after the baby." Tramp tried to persuade Lady to stay with him, but she was determined to go home. Finally Tramp agreed to show Lady the way back. As they approached Lady's home, Tramp spotted a hen house. "Ever chased chickens?" he asked Lady. "Certainly not," Lady replied. "Then you've never lived," cried Tramp. "Follow me." Tramp began chasing the chickens around the farmyard. Feathers flew everywhere. Lady was horrified. Suddenly there was a gunshot. "Come on," shouted Tramp as he squeezed under a fence. "That's the signal to get going." Tramp and Lady dashed round the corner. They splashed through a stream and jumped over ditches. Tramp was racing ahead. When he turned round, Lady was nowhere to be seen. She had been caught by a dog catcher. Poor Lady was taken off to the dog pound, a dark, terrible place where all the unwanted dogs were locked up. Lady's eyes filled with tears as the door of her cell clanged shut behind her. Later that day Lady was surprised to find out that all the other dogs knew about Tramp. It seemed he had lots of other girlfriends. Lady felt sad and disappointed. She had thought she and Tramp had a special friendship. She decided to try to forget him. Before long, Aunt Sarah came to collect Lady from the dog pound. She was very cross with Lady for running away. When they got home she chained Lady to a kennel in the garden. That evening when Tramp came to visit, Lady refused to speak to him. As Tramp left, Lady felt so unhappy that she lay down in the kennel and cried. Suddenly she noticed two eyes glinting in the shadows. A huge rat was scurrying towards the house. Lady barked and tried to chase it away, but her chain held her back. Luckily Tramp heard Lady barking. He ran back to see what was wrong. "It's a rat," cried Lady. It ran up the side of the house and into the baby's room. In a flash Tramp was inside the house running up the stairs and through the nursery door. The rat was about to jump into the baby's cot when Tramp leapt at it. The cot toppled over and the baby began to cry. Tramp chased the rat around the room. There was a terrible fight. Finally Tramp trapped the rat and killed it. Outside Lady managed to pull free from her chain. She raced inside the house and upstairs to the nursery. But Aunt Sarah had heard the commotion and had come rushing into the nursery. "Merciful heavens," she cried, staring at the mess. The dead rat was hidden behind the curtains. Aunt Sarah only saw Lady and Tramp and immediately blamed them. "You vicious brutes," she shouted, pushing Tramp into a cupboard with her broom. Then she dragged Lady downstairs and locked her in a dark, damp cellar. Aunt Sarah telephoned the dog pound and ordered them to come and take Tramp away. As Tramp was being led to the pound wagon, Jim Deer and Darling arrived back home. They rushed inside the house and were met by Lady, who had managed to escape from the cellar. Lady began barking wildly and led Jim Deer up to the nursery. She showed him the dead rat behind the curtains. Lady knew in her heart that Jim Deer would understand that Tramp had killed the rat and saved the baby. Meanwhile Jock and Trusty were following the scent of the pound wagon. They were determined to try and free Tramp. When they finally caught up with the wagon, Trusty barked at the horses. The horses reared up and the wagon overturned. It crashed to the floor, trapping Trusty's leg beneath. Then the wagon door sprung open and Tramp leapt free. Suddenly a taxi drove up with Lady and Jim Deer in it. Luckily Jim Deer had realized that Tramp had rescued the baby. From that day, Tramp was welcomed into Jim Deer and Darling's home forever. few months later at Christmas, Jock and Trusty, whose broken leg was mending well, came to visit Lady and Tramp. As they arrived, 4 little puppies ran to greet them. "They've got their mother's eyes," said Trusty. He looked fondly at 3 of the tiny puppies. "Aye, but there's a bit of their father in them too," said Jock, trying to stop the 4th puppy chewing his coat. Behind the puppies sat Lady and Tramp. Tramp looked over at his family and smiled. He knew they would all live happily ever after. The end. Fun fact: the American and English Cocker Spaniels are separate breeds even though they are very similar. American Cockers have rounder heads and more pronounced eyebrows, whereas English Cockers have longer snouts. Were you paying close attention to the story? Try the fun quiz. What did Lady and Tramp have to eat at Tony's restaurant? The answer is spaghetti. Who put Lady in the dark, damp cellar? The answer is Aunt Sarah. How many pups did Lady and Tramp have? The answer is 4 pups. Fun fact: the most expensive dog collar in the world is the $3.2 million diamond-studded Amour. The chandelier design, 52-carat collar has over 1,600 hand-set diamonds, with a 7-carat flawless diamond centerpiece. The Amour also uses platinum, 18-carat white gold and crocodile leather. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Remember to like and subscribe for free to the Telltale channel and click the notification bell for more stories, quizzes, and fun facts. Check out the channel's playlist for more Telltale stories and fairy tales.